Morrison's Ghost by Martin Gregory. Chapter 1. I am probably what you'd call a lifelong skeptic. I never had religion, never believed in the supernatural, UFOs. I was never a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. And then I got mixed up with a few things. Maybe I should say a few people. And before I knew it, I was a believer in everything I just mentioned, and more. Even fairies. My name's Ian Spellman, but everyone calls me Jim. It's a nickname from years ago, when I had long, dark, curly hair. That and my slight 6-foot frame reminded some people of the late Jim Morrison, the famous guitarist from the band The Doors, who committed suicide in his early 20s. I never really knew what to think about that, but I got used to it after a while. Well, sort of. If I was being kind, I'd say I had a really ordinary upbringing. If I was being truthful, I'd say it was dull. As an only child, my parents would often leave me to my own devices while they did their 9-to-5 jobs. As time went on and they got promoted, I'd see less and less of them. But they knew they could trust me. Many strict teachers demanded my attention, and I was completely focused on doing well. And I did do well. I passed my GCSEs and then my A-levels with A-stars all round, and Mum and Dad were delighted with my grades. Dad got me a position as a junior clerk at the massive accountancy firm he worked for, and he was proud to tell everyone that I would follow in his and my grandfather's footsteps in the business of accountancy. It sounds almost Victorian, but I was comfortable with the arrangement, and quite happy when Dad said my first morning would be 8 a.m. on Monday, the 23rd of September. 8 a.m. sharp, Dad kept saying. That's 8 a.m. sharp. They're sticklers for punctuality. It would be fine, I kept saying. What could possibly make me late? I guess nobody reckoned on well-behaved little me going a bit berserk. It started when I got invited out on a farewell party by some of my more adventurous college friends. I was always turning down invites to go out, but this one was different. The whole crowd together for what could be the last time. I couldn't say no. Ever been on a booze cruise before? Asked Melissa. I'd known Melissa since we shared an awkward conversation on the first day of term. She had long pink hair and wore the scariest set of fingernails I've ever seen. She was effortlessly cute. I had turned 18 more than a year earlier, and still my newly minted provisional driving licence was waiting to be tested in any pub or bar. Melissa told me about the stops we'd make as the boat sailed around the river dock. It sounded fine. A drink in each of the 5 stops. I could do that. Unfortunately, I wasn't told the start time of the cruise would be 9 p.m. By the time we disembarked at pub number 3, I was legless. We all had a drink in a bar on the quay before the cruise started, and goodness knows how many between stops. By this time, Melissa and I were walking arm in arm and singing at the tops of our voices. By the time we reached stop number 5, it was all a bit of a blur. I remember spilling our drinks as we snogged on the dance floor, and I remember returning to the boat to wait for the others. The process of getting onto the boat seemed a little trickier than before, partly because the gangplank wasn't down. It's a small miracle we didn't end up in the dark, dirty dock water when we jumped onto the boat. We fell onto the deck, sprawled and laughing, the alcohol in our systems effectively cushioning any pain. We shared a bottle of something while waiting for the others, huddled together under some kind of tarpaulin. I think we had sex and fell asleep under there, because when we woke, I could feel an odd vibration. I peeked out and blinked in the sudden daylight. I rubbed my eyes. I could hardly believe what I saw. All I could see was sea. Miles and miles of grey sea. In our drunken, loved-up state, we must have got onto the wrong boat, and instead passed out on some rusty old tug. I always had bad luck with my phone, and true to form, had lost it at some point the night before. Luckily, Melissa still had hers. I used it to call the house phone to let Mum and Dad know that I was stranded 400 miles from home. But there was no answer. It wasn't until I dialed the number that I realised I hadn't actually heard the house phone ring for years. Did we even still have a house phone? I could never memorise sequences of numbers. Quite a good thing for a would-be accountant, you might think. So I couldn't call a single person that I knew. Thankfully, Melissa was able to get in touch with a mutual friend of a friend who agreed to let my folks know where I was. I had no clue how they would react, but it was already Sunday afternoon and I was due to start my new job the following day. Melissa held my hand and told me it would be okay. It wasn't okay. I got horribly seasick and spent hours in some dirty cabin throwing up into a metal basin while having to hear Melissa bang the skipper in the cabin next door. When we eventually rolled into Ilfracombe Harbour, our lift wasn't there. Melissa's pal Mitch had broken down somewhere near Honiton. Hours later, he turned up in something resembling a breaker's yard on wheels, and after breaking down yet again on the journey home, I finally walked through the front door at 9:10 on Monday morning, looking and smelling considerably bad. One ultra-quick bath and a speedy change into my suit later, I was literally jumping up and down on the pavement outside the house as I waited for the taxi to arrive. I cursed under my breath at every red light we encountered. But at 10:30 a.m, I finally arrived at Magnus & Magnuson and reported to the posh lady at reception. She gave me a really snotty look, which I attempted to play down with one of my winning, sorry smiles. "I'll call Mr. Magnuson." She nodded toward a nest of table and chairs. "Wait over there, please." The grumpy cow made her call while I waited. I was sure it would be fine. I mean, it was my first day. Had nobody ever been late on their first day in the entire history of this company? As it turned out, no, they hadn't. And no, it was not fine. "I'm afraid Mr. Magnuson's too busy to see you now," said the receptionist. "What should I do?" I asked nervously. "Go home. Mr. Magnuson will call you if he wishes to reschedule." My heart sank. "Mr. Magnuson said he'd call me when he's ready to reschedule," I kept telling Dad. But he knew the truth. He knew I'd blown it. I was persona non grata at home, in perpetuity it would seem. Pocket money was out of the question, and with the university boat having sailed, at least for a year, I wouldn't be getting a student loan. And Dad kept saying words like rent and housekeeping and pay your way in the world. None of that stuff had really occurred to me before. Now it was a reality I had to face. I applied for whatever job came up, but heard nothing back from any of them, and I realised just what an opportunity the job at Dad's firm had been. Then one day, an update from one of the many recruitment agencies I signed on with plopped into my inbox. That's how I found the vacancy at the packing factory. And that's where my life really started.